Running a travel business can be overwhelming, but imagine if there was a single tool that helped you look professional, stay organized, was easy to use, and affordable. That's just what Travify does. Travify gives you the essential tools you need to look like a travel biz pro. Travify is the most trusted system used by over 30,000 travel brands worldwide. So get started with a system that helps you get back to the joy of planning travel and run your travel business like a pro with Travify.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Lynn, your systems and delegation coach, and I love getting to help travel advisors go from overwhelmed to being in control CEOs. I have a bunch of free resources for you as you go through Prep for Wave Week. You can scan the QR code or text the number below. I want to send you a couple really awesome things that are going to help you not be overwhelmed when the wave hits.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to day one of Prep for Wave Week. If you've been around Prep for Wave Week for a while, you know that this used to be called Foundations and switched up to Essentials because I think it's just a little bit easier for you to understand the essentials. And E&O insurance is definitely one of those essentials that you need for your travel business. Fan favorite, highly requested to come back, Miguel Campos from Berkshire Hathaway. Welcome back to Prep for Wave Week.
Well, hey, thanks again for the invite, Rita. We greatly appreciate it. We had a great time last was about
Yeah,
later 2023, I think.
yeah,
Insurance is one of those boring subjects in all industries, but we like to make it a little bit more interesting and spend a little time with our customers, educating them. And it's great to have a platform like yours to be able to do that. I think
mhm,
I've said this before. This is an extremely large benefit that you offer your colleagues, your customers, etc. Because this is a very misunderstood type of insurance.
right.
Specifically, all insurance tends to have a little bit of misunderstanding. This one more so than others.
Yeah,
So it's great to have an opportunity to get on here and discuss some of those things with you.
yeah, no, and I feel like this is just one of those topics that we need to talk about on an annual or every now and then situation because I feel like it gets lost sometimes. You might just do your annual renewal and then never think about it, but this is the time that we're starting to think about it a little bit more. For people that might not have seen our session before or are brand new, what is Berkshire Hathaway? What do you do? How did you get into the travel industry?
Yeah, so our trade name is Berkshire Hathaway Travel Protection, which is owned by Berkshire Hathaway Specialty Insurance out of Boston. So we were an acquisition company about 8 years ago, actually 9 years ago now. Prior to that, we were Insure America, which was actually started. If you know anything, if you're almost retired in this industry, you'll know the name I'm about to mention, and that was John Noel. So he was basically the creator of travel insurance as we all know it today through a
Oh,
former company, Travel Guard. So after that company was sold off to AIG, he loved the travel industry, started Insure America, which was then sold to Berkshire Hathaway Specialty Insurance. So John is no stranger to mega insurance companies out there.
mhm.
And so over the past 9 years, we've been working under the Berkshire BHSI, as they refer to it as, under their banner. Now they only deal with very, very, very large risks, but this particular division specializes in all things travel related,
Okay.
specifically like the liability piece. But later on, I'll do a short little plug, but we'll be doing more than just E&O insurance here in the future. You might have seen it on the
Ooh.
wires already. So, um, but yeah, and I'm Miguel Campos. I've been with the company for 15 years as of this month, so I know lots of things about this industry. Prior to that, I worked in the travel insurance space, and prior to that, I was also a travel agent myself. So not a whole lot I don't know about this industry. It is ever changing, and I've been a part of all of those changes for what seems like a positive and good eternity.
Oh yeah, yeah, you said that and I'm like, wow, we got in around the same time because I think I first got st like signed paperwork to get into the industry October 15 years ago. So right
Sure.
neck and neck there. Pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's been a great industry. I think one of the greatest things about working for this particular company in general is that we get to do things like this. This is not at all for people. This is not a typical thing insurance companies do. As a matter of fact, no one does this in this industry. It's just like I just sell you a product and you buy it or you don't buy it, and then we
Yeah.
move on. I
Yeah.
mean, this is not something that insurance companies do. But we've always found that it's just another way to connect with our customers, and we really want our customers to understand what it is they're purchasing. I think,
Mhm.
it benefits us all. to be able to understand what it is you're buying. So it's great that we're allowed the ability to do this for all
Yeah.
parties.
Yeah. So let's jump in because I think that's a really great starting point and a really great refresher because E&O insurance, errors and omissions is not travel insurance. So can you
Yeah.
tell us the differences? Because I know that those are huge. So what is E&O insurance and how does
Yep.
it differ from travel insurance that someone might buy for a trip?
Yeah, perfect question. So errors and omissions insurance, first of all, that's more or less the layman's term. So,
Mhm.
errors and omissions, really what it is referred to in the insurance industry on a contract you'll receive from us would be commercial professional liability or CPL or professional liability or PL liability,
Mhm.
PL, professional liability coverage. That is what it actually is. So travel insurance is something that your consumer, as the travel agent, your consumer buys to protect their particular trip. Whereas E&O insurance is a business liability policy. It is business insurance that protects
Mhm.
you, the travel agent, from your consumer and your liabilities to the consumer. Now that could be anything from messing up somebody's trip. You've got wrong dates, wrong time zones, wrong airport code, misspell a last name, input a passport number incorrectly, don't advise them on the particular visas that are needed to travel to, from, or through, or even advise them that they need a passport. Believe it or not, you can be held liable, and we have had customers held liable for that and
Huh.
had to go to court for that, for not telling a person specifically that, yes, you do need a passport to go to Mexico. Um, so again, that's a rare incident. But if your customer just decides that, hey, I don't recall Rita putting in her documentation that I needed a passport, and say you just forgot it as the customer, just
Uh-huh.
slipped your mind, left it on the counter. You could blame your travel agent for it, and if they don't have proof that they told you to bring it,
Yikes.
and they take you to court, there's a good chance you're going to be successfully held liable.
Mhm.
And insurance that's specific to the travel space is typically going to cover something like that. I've had those claims covered before. So those are the two differences. One is protecting the consumer's trip itself, the product, no different than like buying cell phone insurance or protecting your cell phone itself. This is protecting the business from the millions of different scenarios that could go wrong for you or that you could be accused of and held liable for. This is the insurance you would purchase. Now,
Mhm.
there's obviously many different forms of insurance out there, and obviously we'll probably get into more of that, the differences in insurances out
Yeah.
there and why you would want specific for your travel space. But we'll wait for that later on here.
Yeah. Do well, I feel like you're gonna say yes, but I'm going to assume all like this is something all travel advisors should have. Would there be any situation that a travel advisor would not need E&O insurance?
I mean, if you're looking for from a best practices perspective, no. It's just kind of like terms and conditions. Like, should I have terms and conditions? Um, yeah, I mean, everybody should have terms and conditions. Whether or not you can afford them or whether or not you have an attorney to do them, another topic of discussion.
Mhm.
But yes, the answer is yes, you should have it. Anybody who is working under their own name, anybody who's not a W-2 employee should highly consider getting a business liability insurance
Uh,
because as
Great.
an independent contractor, which 90% of the industry is now, um,
Mhm.
you're not a W 2 employee. So there is a limited amount of protection that you have under a host or much less under a host insurance policy. And
Mhm.
most agents out there and their hosts don't have a clear understanding of what that limited coverage even is. And the only way you'll ever understand what that limited coverage is and the scope is if you're actually talking with somebody like me who's an underwriter, not a
Mhm.
salesperson, but an actual underwriter that understands the policy and the legalities of the insurance company itself and understands the
Okay.
claims process. So you really need to talk to an underwriter, not a customer service rep per se, and not a salesperson, the actual person that makes the decisions. So that's important to understand. Um, so yeah, I would say the only other person that could possibly get away with maybe not having the insurance is if you're an independent contractor that works under a host exclusively and you're basically working more or less as an assistant where the consumer really never knows that you exist. Almost
Mhm.
like an administrative assistant sort of position, but maybe
Uh-huh.
you get paid some sort of commission on the books, okay, but like the consumer really never knows that Rita's doing any of this, but your
Hmm.
host knows that you're doing this. Then you have limited liability there because the consumer doesn't know you exist and your name isn't on any paperwork. There's no LLC, there's no Facebook, Instagram, or social presence anywhere. So there's if you mess something up, the host is being held liable because no one knows you exist. So in that
Okay.
one-off situation that doesn't really occur very often, then yeah, you're probably mostly safe without needing insurance. But any other typical situation where you have your own business, your own LLC, your own social media, your own email, even if you're under a host, you should strongly consider getting your E&O insurance. To be honest.
Yeah, that's one of the big questions of, well, my host has E&O, won't I be covered? But if another IC has had this major claim and they've used up, then who's going to cover you?
Yeah, we actually had a situation the end of last year where one of our smaller hosts had a pretty large claim, and they didn't wipe out their limit, but it
Okay.
wiped out a significant amount of the limit. So they actually just stopped allowing any claims to be filed under their policy. So
Wow.
that is again, that is entirely up to the discretion of the business owner, aka the host.
Mhm.
And they don't necessarily have to discuss that or disclose that to the independent
Mhm.
contractor. It's their policy. They can do with it what they want.
Mhm.
Unless there's something in there contractually that says otherwise, you're at the mercy of the host and the access to its policy. And then both of you, the host and the IC, are at the mercy of what the contract from the insurance company says you're allowed to legally even be able to do.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a lot of stuff to know. So,
Yeah.
quote unquote. So, like, unless you're talking to a Miguel at the insurance company, you're probably not going to know a lot of that, or you're going to
Mhm.
get the sort of like the telephone game definition there, and that could have changed 30 different times.
Right.
And that's again, this is why these sort of annual types of things you put on Rita are important because people kind of forget this,
Yeah.
and it's nice to refresh to remember. Oh yeah, yeah, I should definitely check on that with my host.
Yeah.
The other thing that I am starting to find that I have not found with our hosts that we insure, but I have been finding through other hosts is securing of a quote unquote host policy, or at least that's what they're calling it. And then having the independent contractors sort of subsidize the premium that the host is paying under the auspices that somehow it is their individual policy. So that's a huge problem if you're not asking questions of this host.
Right.
So I had an incident where a host had a $10 million policy put together, um, supposedly that all of the independent contractors were going to be named. Long story short, really what was happening here is the host was had a particular premium for this large limit, and all of the independent contractors were being charged a price that was then being used to pay the host's insurance premiums.
No.
But the reality is that your name is never going to be put on that host policy because you're not a vendor of the host. You're working on behalf of the host, but under your
Correct.
own name. There's a difference there legally. So no one's going to get a policy saying, you know, your business name on there, but it was sort of the way in which it was written, it sort of seemed that way, but that was
Mhm.
not the case. And if you're a large enough host with a large enough amount of independent contractors, you're bound to have at least half of your ICs not asking any questions.
Mhm.
And you don't understand the coverage, you're not fully covered, but you read it as if you are. So this was
Wow.
I've seen this twice now with hosts, and just be aware. You know, if you
Yeah.
are under a host, and there's plenty of times where you have limited coverage under a host, where it's totally legal, totally fine. But again, it's always going to be limited. But you really need to ask questions, look at the policy, see if you're able to contact the insurance company to get a little bit more information from them
Mhm.
about it. Seek the policy itself. You know, have the host send the policy. They can white out the premium they're paying.
Mhm.
And if you can't get that information, then maybe find another policy or maybe consider different options to protect yourself. Because ultimately, if you don't do that due diligence, you're literally the only one that suffers any consequences from it.
Yeah.
You know,
That's nuts.
yeah.
That's Thank you for bringing that up because I know there's been lots of conversations happening recently about hosts that have red flags, and
Sure.
that would kind of be like a red flag to me if they made me pay for their E&O, but I wasn't covered. Like, and I've always been a huge proponent. Like, if you're an independent contractor, you need to have your own E&O insurance policy. Do not just solely rely on your hosts. I do want to start talking about some of the different other types of insurance policies that somebody might be interested, or at least like talking to somebody about. Because I feel like for the most part, E&O kind of like covers any mistakes that you might make on somebody's trip. But there's other things as a business owner that you might consider, or other like policies that you might consider. So can you
Sure.
talk us through some of those things as far as like owning a business and the different
Yeah.
policies that might, or add-ons that might come into face?
Yeah, two major add-ons that should be considered by anybody is one, if you have a retail location, a commercial storefront, or if you have a separate piece of your house that is technically legally considered commercial for like tax purposes, and you
Mhm.
actually have customers coming there. So like some people may have like an auxiliary dwelling unit or something like that
Uh-huh.
that's separate from the house, maybe a garage turned into an office, where now that's actually considered a commercial space. Or you just have a traditional, you're at a mall or you're at a kiosk or you do a pop-up or you have just a traditional rental facility, that an office. If you have any of
Okay.
those, you should absolutely have a general liability policy. And a general liability, as its name suggests, it's just a liability policy that you are going to work with an insurance company or an insurance broker to piecemeal different types of coverages to fit your specific needs. It's going to
Okay.
be specific to your industry. It's going to be, it's going to have maybe protections if you have W-2 employees. It's going to have protection for the premises, for bodily injury on the premises, like slipping and falling, glass breakage or damage on the facade or signage that you have. If you have a work vehicle that you use or that your employees are using, there's going to be some
Hmm.
sort of non-owned hired auto coverage that might be on there. So if you have a commercial space of any sort, or you're paying a rent to a landlord for a space, you're going to definitely want to talk to somebody about general liability insurance. You should that and that
Okay.
that is almost compulsory, to be honest. Like
Okay.
nobody that runs a business that has a commercial place doesn't have general liability, and if you don't, you need to get done with this with this podcast and call somebody, because you could actually be breaking a law, to be honest, in certain
Okay.
scenarios in certain areas of the country where it is mandatory to have certain liability coverages.
Okay.
Um, and then aside from that, and we can assist with some of that, but not all of that. But
Okay.
where we can assist, and the second coverage that I would say is extremely important now, more so than ever, and we kind of discussed this before the meeting here or the podcast, is cyber insurance.
Mm.
Um, this is huge. So
Yeah.
we started offering this about 3 years ago. We started dabbling into it about 3 years ago, I should say, more or less. For the past 2 years, we've been offering it through
Hmm.
some of our cyber partners. We do not offer it under the Berkshire Hathaway name. We offer it under our partners, typically
Okay.
in this instance. I'm not going to say any names yet, but the reason we started offering it is we started seeing a plenty of claims related to cyber losses, things like social engineering, reverse social engineering, and ransomware. And those could be things like
Mm.
somebody's camping out in your email. You don't have any idea they're there,
Yeah.
and they are looking through all of your emails, and all of a sudden they come across this email saying, "Oh, Rita it looks like Rita was working with Tout Tours on a safari for $200,000, and it looks like she sent an invoice to a customer 4 months ago and paid 100K, but there's another invoice that's coming next month that should
Yeah.
be 100K." These cyber attackers will exploit that information. They can use AI, certain different AI mechanisms, to be able to scan emails. And when that email comes from that supplier of talc to get that other 100,000 from you, their AI can come in there, grab that email, or alert them that it came through. They swipe it from your email. They take that invoice, they doctor it up, put a customer service number on there, and some of these hackers are so good, they will literally have working customer service phone numbers, like legitimate, like you call and there's an actual person there pretending to be a customer service agent, and you end up wiring $100,000 to the wrong person.
Oh boy.
So now, as you can imagine, if you're running through your mind this scenario here, you just wired $100,000 to the wrong person, which
Yeah.
means $100,000 still needs to go to the correct person. So that's a $200,000 loss there. So this example, mind you, the number is inflated. It was about an $89,000 loss, is what happened about 3 years ago that spawned us sort of getting into this a little bit more with our
Mm,
customers and being able to offer this, is because we've had now, I should say, I have had now this happen to four of my customers, and all of
wow.
them in excess of $60,000. So these are not inexpensive claims. And these are just
Right.
social engineering claims. You have other scenarios where they will go into your email and then use your, essentially your image and likeness, if you will, via your email, and actually solicit things from your customers, or maybe you have independent contractors solicit stuff from your independent contractors, whether it be fund transfers, wire transfers, passwords, password resets, things to basically, dupe the other person, whether it's an IC or one of your customers.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using your email, so it's extremely effective, because unless you are an extremely suspicious person, um, why would you think anything's incorrect with Rita sending you an email telling you
Right.
need to click on this link? You know, so
Mm,
it's becoming kind of a scary sort of landscape out there in the cyber world,
right.
which is why it is more important than ever to consider this. Now, the downside, because this is happening more and the losses are horrendous, it's not inexpensive. So
Yeah.
um, it's not inexpensive. The difference, though, or not the difference, but the thing that we kind of do to sort of help alleviate some of the expense with cyber is we do have the ability to have lower limits. So in the E&O world,
Okay.
you're typically going to have $1 million in coverage. That you should. That's the amount you probably should have. Some people have a $500,000 limit. We don't ever recommend that, but you know it can lead a horse to water, right? So with cyber, we can go down to about $250,000. Most of
Okay.
us here in the office are going to give you three limits: 250K, 500K, and $1 million to consider.
Okay.
Um, I can tell you, I reluctantly give prices here, so do not hold me to this, because you can also be declined coverage from the cyber
Right.
insurers. But I have seen, on average, a home-based agent doing between 200,000 and $1 million in sales with less than four people working for them or under them,
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from $675 to about $1,100 for a
Okay.
$250,000 limit. Once you get
Okay.
up to 500 and a million, those limits get real expensive. I do have people purchase them because they're cautious or it makes sense for
Mm-hmm.
them.
Right.
Um, but I'd say the majority of people are usually going around $250,000 limit, which is between the 675 $1,100 range. I know that's a bigger
Okay.
range, but
Yeah.
cyber underwriting is like a whole nother animal,
I
because
bet.
the losses, and it's because the losses are big.
Right.
These losses are huge, so and it's not going to be anywhere near what they're going to pay out on your behalf.
Mm-hmm.
But it is still a little pricey. So the underwriting is a little bit more stringent, and we can
Okay.
help walk you through that.
Okay. Because a typical loss might be like a four-figure type of a loss, where a cyber loss is more typical. It sounds like a five or a six-figure type loss. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
that is huge, especially when we're thinking about like small business owners. I want to jump more into cyber, but I had a question from the general liability aspect because I know you did mention a lot of events. So would somebody that's doing a lot of vendor events, and I'm thinking like fall festival season is coming up. We've got lots of
Sure.
Christmas market stuff that's happening. Even like people that specialize in destination weddings and honeymoons, they're going to be going to all these bridal shows that are coming up. Is that something that needs to be in consideration for general liability insurance?
Yeah, depending on the venue. So there are, especially with regards to like weddings and going to like trade shows, especially that are not travel trade shows per se. They're like a wedding
Uh-huh.
trade show, and you're coming there to do destination management stuff.
Okay.
They may request that you have a particular amount of premises liability. Now,
Okay.
you have an amount of that under your E&O policy for things like bodily injury. So, like if somebody
Mhm.
gets injured and you're the person held liable, there is an amount of coverage on our E&O policy for you that will, in most cases, satisfy whatever venue you're working with. It's their
Okay.
requirements. However, some of the venues are very, very strict, and they want it to be specific to that venue, and they want maybe $2-3 million in premises liability along with bodily injury. So to buy that kind of limit on an E&O policy would cost
Oh,
substantially more than it needed to. So in that circumstance, it would make sense to buy a supplemental general liability policy that already has that premises liability and
okay.
bodily injury in there for the $3
Nice.
million limit, because you're going to pay substantially less. And
Okay.
it's cheaper because it has a lot less coverage and more exclusions. And the losses in the general liability world are way, 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 way smaller than they are in the professional liability world, which is why
Okay.
professional liability costs more.
Okay. Perfect. Because general liability is for these more general situations. Professional liability is what E&O insurance or E&O insurance kind of falls under, right?
Yep, and it's for your to think the easier way to think about it is professional liability covers your liability for your services to the customer. General
Love
liability
that.
doesn't. If you screw something up on a booking or a group booking and it's $100,000 loss to rebook it, a general liability policy will never cover that. You would
Okay.
need professional liability in order to cover the professional services you offered.
Perfect.
So that's a big difference, and it's important to understand that because I have come across in my career thousands of agents that had a general liability policy for years when that
Hmm.
and they don't have any employees, no commercial storefront, and they don't have any real business assets beyond besides a computer and a
Yeah.
cell phone. So that general liability policy is almost entirely useless to you. Like it would cover almost nothing.
Okay.
so so it's important to understand the differences there because you may be one of the persons listening that has a general liability that's not going to do a lot for you in this travel space.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's really great to know.
Yeah.
Um, I want to jump back to cyber because you had mentioned, and I've heard instances and I've seen like news articles come out of these types of like phishing where they're trying to get like a wire transfer, but exactly what you said, they're using the technology and the funds are not going where you think that they're going to be going. Is there anything that travel advisors can do? I mean, insurance is more reactionary, but is there anything to like be proactive? Like, of course, having some sort of policy just to help out if anything should happen. But I'm like, what technologically wise should travel
Yeah.
advisors? Is this like updating passwords every couple of months? Is this making sure you have like a certain CRM platform that you're using or what?
Sure. No, good questions. Yeah. So when it comes to this, first of all, most cyber insurers, including ours, are going to require you to do these proactive things in order to even get the
Okay.
insurance. So,
Okay.
so you can
Perfect.
almost 100% of the chance rest assured that you're going to be doing the proactive things if you have anybody's cyber insurance, at least if it covers these types of things, because they want to make sure they reduce their risk by you doing all of the right things. And one of those right
Uh-huh.
things is a couple of those things, I guess, would be one is changing passwords on a more regular cadence, number one.
Okay.
Because as I said in that example earlier with the social engineering, people can camp in your email for months at a time, just waiting, just like a fisherman, a fisherwoman, just sitting
Uh-huh.
there waiting patiently for the big one. And that's what they'll do. And then they don't even have to sit there and wait. They've got some sort of thing that's doing it for them. So if you're changing your passwords a little bit more frequently, you may end up changing the password, and boom, now they're kicked out. And they're probably going to move on to the next target. So
Okay.
you've saved yourself, and you don't even realize you did it. So password changing on a regular cadence, definitely probably the number one thing to do. Number
Okay.
two, having some sort of multi-factor authentication. That is
Ooh.
more and more cyber insurers, if it's any kind of good cyber insurance, are going to mandate that you have that. Otherwise, they won't even insure you. And
Hmm.
multi-factor authentication, that's most of us have. If you have a CRM, it's probably already required. So you,
Yeah.
you enter your password in, and then it says, hey, we're going to text your cell phone or text your email or send an email to you with a 6-digit code. That's
Hmm.
multi-factor authentication. You should have on your cell phone, your laptop, all of your CRMs, your bank account, or business stuff I'm referring to. You should
Right.
do it for your private stuff too.
Yes.
But talking about business here, anything that's got a login, if they have multi-factor authentication as an option, click yes. It's an extra step. I know it's annoying, but the reality is all of us are doing it. So
Yeah.
just do it because the ramifications of not doing it could put you out of business, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
multi-factor authentication, that's the second one. And then third thing, when it comes to social engineering with regard to like the wire transfer fraud I was talking about, Having a protocol where anytime you're wire transferring, you should have one or two individuals that handle that, no more. And the
Okay.
protocol should be one or two individuals that handle that, and that they always have to dual verify. You always have to verify the email and then call the person as well. And not using the email that you were sent you's phone number, but a phone number on the legitimate website, on their business card,
Mhm.
something you've got to be able to trust that it's a legitimate phone number, because the fake invoice you may have sent may have a fake phone number, and they're going to say, yeah, hey, it's me, Miguel, send it on over. They already know everything about this vendor. They've scoured
Right.
throughout they went on the socials of your vendor, they went on the website of the vendor, they know everything about the vendor, so they know who they need to be. So
Okay.
you need to have a trusted source to get the data in order to make a trusted phone call to this end person in order
Hmm.
to verify the money's going to the correct person. And I know
Okay.
all of this, if your head's spinning, you're like, ah, that's a lot of time. It is, and there is no other way around it. That's just where
Yeah.
we're at. It's just going to suck up more time. And I tell people that bluntly because I'm like, there's no magic dust. It's just going to consume more of your time. That's
Right.
it. um, so
But it's
it's it,
better
it's
than having a $50,000 bill or a $100,000 bill.
Yep, exactly. So those are the things I would highly recommend to sort of be proactive. Number one,
Okay.
and number two, those are things that are likely going to be required of your cyber insurer. And just kind of like a key takeaway here is if those things aren't being mentioned to you or aren't being required of you from your cyber insurer, you may want to look at another cyber insurer, because the reality is if
Mhm.
they're not requiring or recommending those things, they probably don't cover those types of things, which is
Oh
why they're not
no.
requiring them.
Oh wow. That's a big thing
You
on
know,
its own.
yeah. I wouldn't care as an insurer if you don't do multi-factor authentication or double verify wire transfers if I have no intention of covering the potential disaster of messing that up. Why would
Right.
I care? I don't care.
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
insuring it anyways. So that is one of those things that may
Wow.
seem that you may not think about. Is just sort of a trick of the trade. If you're not
Hmm.
hearing people ask for these things or verifying that you have or requiring these things, it's probably because they don't cover those things,
Yeah.
which isn't good.
That's insane. Yeah, especially with how heightened they're getting, because I know that they're even being able to clone your email address. So it
Yep.
looks exactly like it came from you, but it didn't come from you. But that's
Yep. Yeah, the
so
spoofing, like
freaky.
they've been able to do that with phone numbers for years. Where you get a
Yes.
phone, it's like, oh, this is so and so vendor that I know, and it turns out it's not them. That one of those things is called spoofing, where they're basically copying or cloning an email or copy or cloning a phone number. And
Hmm.
I mean, like, how do you prevent that? How do you?
Yeah.
I mean, you can only do so much, and once you've done all the things like the MFA and the changing of the passwords and all, double verification of wire transfers, that's then where like cyber insurance comes in. Is like you've done all the things and you still got hit.
Right.
It's like, and it's we were talking before we got on here, Rita, just about AI and its usage for
Hmm.
criminal type of activity. Well, that's
Right.
what it's being used heavily for. Is things like this. AI it's a blessing and a curse to us all.
Right.
And ever since to give a time frame, not to bring up COVID, but post COVID, cyber attackers have been going crazy on small businesses because they are somewhat correctly under the impression that smaller businesses aren't quite caught up yet on what they need to do to prevent
Mhm.
these types of attacks, or it's the mindset of it's never going to happen to me, they just do it to big
Right.
businesses. Well, they got smart. They're like, geez, it takes me 10 minutes to hack 50 small businesses to get $10,000 a piece versus spending you know 80 days trying to hack into IBM for possibly nothing, and I might have to camp out in there for a year. Um, they're just going to go. They're business people. They're going to
Yeah.
find the easy money, and that's what they're
Yeah.
doing. Unfortunately, it may be easy money for them to acquire, but it's hard money for the smaller business to obtain.
Exactly.
you know,
That's the downfall. That's the downside. You
yeah.
keep saying the word camp, so I'm gonna make the secret word for this session camp. So travel
I li-
advisors, there you go. Camp. That's your word.
nice. I like it.
Is there anything else that you've kind of noticed? Because I know we've talked a lot about like the cyber insurance and the phishing scams. Is there anything else that travel advisors at this moment, like we're gearing up to end of 2025, starting 2026, need to be aware of or have on their radar? You did mention there might be some new things coming down the pipeline too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll address the last part of that question there first. Yeah, so if you haven't already saw on the different wires out there in the travel world, so we are in about 2 months we will be going to market with our consumer travel insurance platform. So if you've been
Oh,
following our company forever, we had did this several years ago, and we decided it was easier and best for us at that time to work with a partner at that time, which was a larger travel insurance company that was sold the products for us. We underwrote them, and now we decided that we think we do it best, and we're extremely customer focused, and we love the fact that if we control that top to bottom, we can give the greatest customer experience that we want. And that is
nice.
exactly what we want, and that's exactly what we plan to do. So you will be seeing that all over the place where you will be able to sign up. Um, I believe, and now I don't work in that realm right now, but at bhtp.com, I believe you can find the sign up information on there right now, where you will be in about a month and a half, where you'll
Okay.
be able to sign up just like whoever you're using right now for your travel insurance. You'll be able to do that through us. And our biggest sort of claim to fame, besides always being customer focused, is the speed of the ability
Okay.
to file claims. I know if you've ever seen like different online car insurance companies, the ability to take photos of things and have claims settled like sometimes in the same day and then in the same hour in some instances. That's sort of what we're kind of going for, is heavy on the tech to be able to satisfy your customers quickly. Because if we
Hmm.
can do that, then they love you and you love us, and it's a win-win-win across the board.
Right.
So this has been a long time coming. I could say literally it's probably been like a 9 year process realistically, and it's finally here. So we're extremely excited about
Awesome.
it because you can come to us for your travel insurance, you can come to us for your E&O insurance, you can come to us for your cyber, and who knows what else is coming. Um, and these are all very specific. We're all very hands-on. We're like the only insurance company left then in the business world that gives you your own agent at the actual insurance company yet,
Yeah.
that does these types of trainings. So I think a lot of great things are out there for our customers now. So keep an eye on that.
Hmm.
I think people are going to love it. So, but as far as, so that covers that. What was the other question there, Rita? I've got so in.
Any scenarios other than what we've been talking about, like with cyber insurance, that you see are kind of starting to become common or starting to where people are like, I need help or I need to use my E&O insurance for?
Sadly, the one thing that I can bring up is we are seeing an uptick in claims related to bodily injury, which, as an insurance company,
Ah,
we don't want to see because those are
yeah.
big claims. Um, so prior to 3, 4 years ago, that it was more rare. I wouldn't say it didn't happen on a casual basis, but
Okay.
we're seeing a lot more claims related to injury, people getting injured and holding the travel agent liable. We recently, we recently settled a claim for bodily injury. Unfortunately, a person was killed abroad,
Oh,
and the travel agent was sued, more or less sued for not advising the customer on the dangers of this particular area and offering different options for
oh,
hotels and making them aware that this particular area at this particular time of year, et cetera, was dangerous and they need to be cautious. Um, so that in and of itself is kind of mind-boggling to wrap your head around, that you would need
hmm.
to even tell people about this. You know what I mean? The world's unsafe. Just there you go.
Right.
But
Generally.
this, yeah, but this person was brought into the lawsuit. Luckily, they were found not liable, but not
Okay.
before we spent $92,000 in legal fees to address that, and
Oh
two
my
years.
gosh.
So that was just one example. Okay, now that definitely somebody being killed in a foreign country, that is extremely rare.
Hmm.
But we're seeing people getting injured. Hips. The hip gives out and somebody gets injured, falls downstairs, going on a tour in Italy, and they sue the travel agent. There are hundreds of different reasons as to why they might do that. One is
Huh.
They have to because the bill was $275,000 and they don't have the money and they didn't buy trip insurance. So now
Wow.
they're grasping at straws and they get an attorney that's willing to take the case because, hey, the travel agent didn't have good terms and conditions. And in the terms and conditions that they did have, it didn't mention anything about rugged terrain and wearing appropriate attire for this trip. And it just so happens that that travel agent or that DMC that you use that had a tour guide did not speak very much English and wasn't able to relay anything to to the customers of the travel agent clearly in English, and so that was a detriment to the customer. Otherwise, they would have been able to be told that, hey, you need to have better attire and you shouldn't come on this trip. Um,
That's nuts.
and you're seeing that we think we don't know this for a fact, but we think a lot of this has to do with the fact that there is a lot more people traveling that are older and a little bit more prone to injuries. And they're going on expensive trips because they're retired, and why not? You can afford to do
Mhm.
that. So they're going on these more expensive trips. They're going on longer, bigger, larger, more fun trips, where there is the potential for more injury. And it's just the law of large numbers. You deal with a million tourists, you're bound to have 1 to 4% of those individuals have something go wrong, and of those people, you're bound to have 1 to 2% of them file a claim against you just because they can. And we're seeing that
Wow.
more. And these claims are not. I mean, these are not affordable claims for the average, even the above average agents. You know, you
Mhm.
need insurance for those types of claims. I mean, ninety
Right.
thousand dollars that was just the legal fees. Imagine if the person would have been found guilty on any level and had to pay a
Right.
settlement out. So I just say that you should be a little bit more cautious now in making sure you have insurance that covers those things. Not just covers bodily injury, but covers legal fees. And not just covers legal fees, but covers legal fees outside of your limit of liability. So most insurance policies, if not all that I've reviewed, they are
Okay.
going to have limited bodily injury. They are going to definitely have limited bodily injury coverage outside of the United States. And
Mhm.
then almost all of them, whenever you have a claim, your legal fees and whatever damages you end up having to pay erode or go against your limit of liability. So, an example of what that means, if you're listening to this, trying to picture this. So, say you get sued for $1 million, okay, and you have $1 million policy, but it also costs $1 million for litigation. So, it's $2 million loss. Well, you
Mhm.
only have $1 million policy. So, in that scenario, you would end up being on the hook for $1 million out of pocket. Okay. Now, granted, this scenario would never happen because we'd settle way before that.
Uh-huh.
But it would never be an issue with you with us because we cover all of your legal fees outside of that $1 million and it's not capped.
Okay. Okay.
So in that
Oh, nice.
scenario, you would be totally fine. So you could technically have 10 lawsuits in a year as an example, and
Mhm.
every lawsuit cost $100,000, but we won all of them. So
Mhm.
there are no damages paid out. You would still have your full limit of liability and you would have paid no deductible at all because we
Mhm.
cover legal fees on our own dime and it's not capped.
Uh-huh.
Now, don't have 10 lawsuits because we're probably not renewing you next year, but but that gives you an example of the difference in policy. And these
Yeah.
types of things, Rita, are the things that are not obvious to someone
Right.
that doesn't have a
100%.
conversation with an actual underwriter. Because
Mhm.
insurance agents, people who sell you these things, they're not obligated to go in depth on it like this at all. Just like a financial planner, unless they're a fiduciary, they're not
Right.
obligated to tell you every single thing. It's
Right.
just the suitability factor is all. Does this do something for you? Yes or no? That's it. That's really all anybody is obligated to tell you.
Mm.
But we try to go a little bit more in depth because I think it serves us all well if you know these things.
Right. Right. When you were saying that bodily injury, the big thing that kept like flashing in my head was, but what about the decline insurance waiver? So if somebody has that, would they still be privy to some sort of lawsuit potentially happening, or would that cover them if somebody got injured overseas, decided not to get travel insurance, but you said you didn't want to get travel insurance?
Sure, it offers a level of protection, no doubt.
Okay.
Not having it is not a good idea. Number one, first and
Okay.
foremost. Number two, so that is there's what you're asking there is that not helpful? It is helpful, but remember, even with travel insurance, that doesn't cover all injuries. So say it doesn't cover that travel insurance product that they should have bought, wouldn't have covered this anyways.
Mm-hmm.
That's irrelevant at that point in time because that travel insurance wouldn't have applied anyways if they bought it or
Okay.
didn't buy it. So that's irrelevant in that scenario. The other thing, and this is common, or this is something that's important to understand, is that even with terms and conditions, nothing prevents the attorney from deciding to make and mount a case against you to try to defeat those terms and
Mm-hmm.
conditions. And in
Okay.
which case, as our real example earlier, that is $90,000 worth
Yeah.
of litigation in order to get out of it. So you may end up having to go to court anyways to get yourself removed from a scenario, but it's still going to cost you legal fees that
Okay.
you're going to have to pay for. So that's something that should always be kept in mind, is that no matter how good your terms and conditions, no matter if you have an attorney on staff, that's great, but you still have to pay that person,
Mm-hmm.
on your behalf. So I think that one of the single most beneficial pieces of this policy is the legal defense portion
Okay.
of it. But it's also the
Nice.
thing that's least understood and not
Right.
as often discussed. So, but it's because those costs are so extreme, and so unaffordable and so unpredictable. Who would have
Mm-hmm.
thought we would be in court for 2 years only to end up winning?
Right.
It's
Right.
like you think to yourself, well, do I get that 90,000 back yet? No, you don't. It's gone.
Nope.
You get to
Poof.
see in a court of law, you get to tell your customers that you weren't liable and it wasn't your fault,
Uh-huh.
but you're still out $90,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and again, that is obviously a slightly more extreme scenario, of course, but I can
Right.
guarantee you that small $300,000 a year agent had absolutely no idea that that was ever a possibility, much less that it would happen to them.
Right. Right. Well, this was so informative per usual. I feel like we definitely talked about different things. So, travel advisors, if you didn't hear our first presentation a couple years ago, I'll go ahead and I'll link it down below so that you can get more. But thank you so much for your time, because especially how you were saying, like, we just sign off to get the E&O insurance, don't have these lengthy conversations. I think what these are really good for is to kind of supplement for that, to break in a
Sure.
little bit more knowledge about what the policies are, what to be aware of, what to ask, maybe the next time re-enrollment comes. So thank
Absolutely.
you as always.
Yeah, absolutely, Rita. It was always a pleasure. I'm happy to do it again next year.
Yeah.
These are great. I get a lot of people that reach out that have reached out because of listening to the last podcast from you. So it is definitely effective, and you're doing good work by your people by doing this, because it's appreciated on our end, and it definitely seems appreciated on their end.
Awesome. And for those that did want to reach out to you from this
Sure.
one, what's the best way to do that? Is it connecting on LinkedIn, email?
Yeah, so I guess the three best ways, I mean, you can go to bhtp.com and there's an E&O tab. All that does is say that you're interested, and it'll send it to one of the territory managers, either myself,
Okay.
Joe Gallion, or Matthew Weber. Or you can email me at miguel.campos@bhspecialty.com.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can call me as well. Calling's probably the least effective way. Email and is probably the fastest way, just because I can't multitask multiple phone calls, but I
Yeah.
can definitely multitask multiple emails. But my phone number is 715-800-4545 if you wanted to connect that way. Just caveat, it'll take me a while to get back to you via phone versus via email.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. And travel advisors, there are two other presentations today. And if you're already done with those, then head on over to the swag bag or our virtual trade show and take a look at some of the goodies that are in there for you. All right. Until the next one,
Awesome.
everybody. See ya.
See you guys. Thank you. Thanks, Rita.